the core title of your book is Dancing with Fear and Confidence. Why choose that?
To be honest, the book title chose itself. It was the easiest thing to choose about the whole book, because when I talk to people in midlife, it's exactly how they feel. So they feel like they're already dancing with fear and confidence. And it's a fascinating dance. So they feel like they already are. And if they're then transitioning as well, it kind of exaggerates that feeling of dance and the dynamic between the two. So when people's fears drop, they don't necessarily become more confident. There's this kind of complex weaving of different elements going on, different fears swinging in, different elements around confidence going up and down. So to be honest, the overall title was the easy bit, and it came out as the strongest message in my own research. And when I started to talk to people about it afterwards, when I was presenting it at conferences, they just went, yes, that's it. So it really resonated with me, but also with the people that I was talking to and the research itself.
So most people's assumptions, I'm hallucinating, that when people think about midlife career change, they're thinking very logically, rationally about, here are all the pros and cons from an economic standpoint, a pleasure, a commute standpoint. But the title is really focused on core emotional and self-esteem.
Yeah.
Layers. Is that where that research is rooted in?
It is. It's rooted in experience. So what is the experience of midlife reinvention? And it was a qualitative research. So it was to get into what's the real experience of it, as opposed to what's the kind of theoretical experience or the academic experience. It was deliberately an experiential, qualitative research, and that's what I got, and that's where the title came from, because that's actually what it feels like. And that's why it is what it is.
So would that also mean that if somebody doesn't really tackle those core zones, so they can have the logic, they can have the spreadsheet and the pros and cons and the equations there, but if they don't tackle those core dynamics of fear and confidence, it's unlikely they will get the change in the way they want it?
Exactly. So the feelings and the emotions are there anyway, so you can pay attention to them and learn from them and get additional insight from them, or you can try and ignore them. But what tends to happen is they'll creep up on you anyway. So it's much more helpful to be aware of them and use them as clues, because they're really good clues. Your head's only part of your knowing. The rest of you can give you some really helpful insight, which is often more grounded and more based on what you truly want, rather than what you think you want or what you think other people want. Yeah.
And the subtitle, the kind of second half of the book's title, How to Liberate Yourself and Your Career in Midlife. Why choose that kind of those two aspects in that bit there?
Well, firstly, the liberation piece is an important insight as well, because what tends to happen when people are at the beginning of a journey on this, they start off very dissatisfied. So dissatisfied, disillusioned, down, de-energized. So there's kind of that piece. And what I was fascinated by is what happens when they have reinvented. So when I did my own research, I talked to people who had already reinvented their lives or their work, and what happened, what helped them, what didn't. And what they found was they didn't go from dissatisfaction to satisfaction. It wasn't that linear. What actually happened was they were liberated, they felt freer, they were more themselves, they were who they should have been in some cases. So it was definitely a liberation. It wasn't I'm more satisfied. It was a freer, bigger experience. than that would suggest. And in terms of life and career, you know, traditionally some people did have them quite separately, but these days it's becoming more of a blended situation for all generations, not just for people in midlife. But what we've also found is that they just interconnect. So if you try and certainly I find this with my coaching, if I try and, you know, somebody just wants to work on one element, either side, they interact anyway. So as a whole person, it really makes sense to pay attention to our whole lives, not just to our career, which is an important part, but it is only part.